Imagine fighting against those odds as an executive, as a leader, as a person, and look at what he achieved in that period.
And the reason he was able to do it is he created a product, the Mac, that people wanted to buy, correct?
He had an installed base of people who loved the feeling of the Mac, but the technology had lagged. By sheer force of will, he built a platform that is now the best in the world for what it does.
Okay, we're now joined by Walt Mossberg, and I'll ask Eric and Mark to stay. Walt Mossberg, you and I have talked about this man many times. He was interviewed by you a number of times. I know that you talked to him on the phone. I know that he followed what you wrote and what you said. We've talked about that before on my program. Give me your own thoughts tonight about his passing.
Well, Charlie, I think we've lost somebody on the scale of Edison or Ford or truly a giant who not only, as Mark and Eric have been saying, saved a company and revolutionized the industry he was in, but I think even more important, you got to remember that unlike a lot of other tech companies, Apple under Jobs always built the products for the actual user, to delight them and empower them, not for the intermediary people like corporate IT departments, which most other computer companies focused heavily on and still do, not tailoring the products especially for like other intermediaries like phone carriers. He used to call both of those groups orifices, and he didn't like building things that had to go through orifices. And Charlie, as a result, I think he went way beyond revolutionizing industries and really changed the way people lived with their digital devices. He had an enormous personal role in pushing that digital revolution, and other people did too, including both Mark and Eric. But without the things that Steve took big leaps on and his laser focus on the actual user, I think things that are also wonderful, like Android phones and a lot of the products at Microsoft would not have been done.
In other words, what he did showed the way for Google to develop Android and all of those kinds of things that came after
and I'm
what
not
he
saying,
had
I'm not
done.
talking about
And the tablet now sets the standard. iPad sets the standard for tablets, and if you're going to create a new tablet, you're trying to create something that will be as good as the iPad.
As good or better or different, whatever, but
right.
I mean, things tend to circle in the areas where Apple chose to concentrate. And by the way, he was very careful about not choosing to concentrate on everything. But in the areas where he chose to concentrate, yes, I think it's fair to say that competitors have had to gauge what they did around what Apple did. Sometimes they did things, have features that are better or different than Apple. Some people prefer the competitors' products. But the main point is he had the vision to go for it all the time. And this is also really important. Many of the problems in business in America and even in the whole world today stem from companies and CEOs who manage for the next quarter, who manage for the short-term stock price. He never did that stuff. I had many hours of off-the-record conversations with him. He was never talking about that stuff. He was talking about stuff years out. Not that he told me many specifics for years out, but he always talked about and thought about how could things be changed over a period of years, not over a period of 90 days. And I think if more CEOs did that in many other industries, we'd all be better off for it.
So what would he say in these phone conversations other than that? Because I always knew when you were talking to me about what, as they say in politics, senior officials, you were talking about Steve. Well, even though you couldn't say that. But
Mark
he would call you up, and how would the conversation... No, of course they do, yeah.
Look...
it says something about you, my friend.
Look, I'm not very important compared to the people sitting there, and certainly not compared to Steve Jobs. But I will tell you a story that I've I've written a bunch of personal remembrances of him that's running in the journal and on All Things D tonight. And one of the things that I remember vividly was, I didn't know him very well when he came back to Apple because I wasn't covering technology during his first stint there. I was covering other things, and I had only met him briefly once. So he started calling my house, and he called every Sunday night for 4 or 5 weekends in a row at the beginning. And I'm not a dope. I mean, I know that he was doing it. The company was in terrible trouble. He was probably calling other journalists as well. I don't presume he was only calling me. And I know that part of it was the game that we all understand. He was obviously trying to kind of woo me a little bit. People don't remember this maybe, but by then, not long before he came back, I'd written a column saying, look, after years of recommending Apple's products, I can no longer recommend them for consumers because of what Eric said, because the company had kind of fallen asleep and they let the products degrade. And these conversations I had with him, at first I thought, oh, he's just calling to kind of butter me up, but they were very wide-ranging. They were very interesting. He would waver between talking about the huge potential that he thought not only Apple but the whole digital industry had, and very tiny things like he'd go into these long critiques of how badly the Apple products at the time he felt were designed. I mean, down to the way icons looked on the screen, which he thought was wrong, and the way.
Okay, Walt, let me interrupt you because this is such a good story, and to have the three of you together, we'll take a break and come right back. We continue this evening with an appreciation of Steve Jobs, who died today, age 56. It is clear that this man's impact was felt by all, and I guarantee you that he will be tomorrow morning on the front page of newspapers around the world and on television programs and online tonight, especially online. The subject of the conversation will be Steve Jobs and what he meant to all the people who are connected to what he did. We are really fortunate this evening to have three people who knew him, who talked with him, who worked with him, who had dinner with him, people who understood all that he meant, but also understood what it was behind what enabled him to do the things that he did. I'm continuing the conversation with Walt Mossberg of the Wall Street Journal.